takes a lot of effort to run this event. So I just want to thank my 9 alumni board committee members and our sponsors, especially our corporate sponsor, who is Synovus. Give them a round of applause, please. And our one media sponsor, Public Broadcasting Atlanta, WABE. We hope you will all return next month on November 16th, where we will hear from Ryan Oliver, who's here this morning. He is a former managing director of US and Canada for Twitter Next. Now on to the program. This morning's talk will be a fireside chat facilitated by Kyle Anderson. Kyle is Vice President of Corporate Strategy at Mativ, primarily focused on driving strategic efforts at the enterprise level. He leads efforts in corporate development, M&A, project management, and other key initiatives of the organization, and partners with Mativ's business units on a global strategy development and activation. A Georgia native, Kyle obtained his undergraduate degree from Tulane, but he made the wise decision and obtained his MBA right here at the Terry Executive Education Center at UGA. Go Dogs. And now, without further ado, please let me introduce today's speaker, Julie Schertell. Julie is president and CEO of Mativ, a 21st century materials company born from the merger of culture and operations at legacy paper firms Neenah and, you might have to help me with this one, SWM. Perfect. It's a much more complicated name when you say it. Julie, who served as CEO of Neenah before the merger, spent a career in the paper and materials industry. She tapped into that experience as she brought the two organizations together, integrating the businesses and delivering transformative growth. Known as a change agent and leader who believes culture and values shape the performance of an organization, she spent 15 years at Neenah before the merger. She took the helm as CEO just as COVID was emerging in the spring of 2020 and led the organization through the crisis with record-level cash flows and increased employee engagement. Julie began her career at Georgia Pacific in 1992 in a finance role. During her 15 years at GP, she served in several roles, including Vice President of Sales and Marketing Strategy, Vice President of Supply Chain, Director of Sales Operations, and Director of Financial Planning and Analysis. She earned her undergraduate degree in accounting from Florida State University and then made the wise decision to come to Terry, where she earned her master in accountancy degree, up in Athens, by the way. Please join me in welcoming Julie Schertell and Kyle Anderson.
So, thank you and good morning, everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and host this fireside chat with Julie. I've had the pleasure of working with Julie for over 15 years. I know it doesn't look it, but yes, it is over 15 years. So it's really a pleasure of mine today to actually be on the one asking the hard-hitting questions of Julie, because usually it's the other way around. She's usually the one asking the really deep, penetrating questions about business and operations. So it's really nice to turn the tables, and thank you guys for your attention today.
I'm just happy you said it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. It is performance review time, so you always gotta. So let's just get right into it. Let's get started. So I know the one question that you and I get asked all the time is, who is Mativ? And yes, how do you pronounce the name?
Yes, well, Mativ is correct. I wonder, can you hear me without the mic? Okay, I'm going to turn the mic off because I just think it's a little challenging. Mativ is correct, and Mativ is the combination of two companies coming together in July of 2022. So it was a merger of equals. It's a very unusual transaction. Our bankers called it an elegant transaction. I don't know if I would classify it as elegant, but it's a very unique transaction. And I think the biggest question we get is, well, what is Mativ? What do you do? Try it now? Okay. Okay. I think the biggest question we get a lot is, what is Mativ? What do we do? And I spent my first 15 years in consumer products. It was so easy to talk to people about what we did because you see it on the shelves every day. Mativ's a little bit more challenging because we're components, and we're oftentimes what we would call the special sauce component of some pretty unique end-use applications. So for example, the car you might have driven into today's meeting, you have air coming in. We provide the filtration media to ensure that we're purifying that air. Same thing in an airplane where you want the highest efficacy of filtration for the air you're breathing. Same thing for water application, so that we provide filtration so there's clean water for a larger population, a larger part of the global population where water is scarce. That Levi's patch on the back of your jeans that you think is leather, it's not. It's paper-based, and we provide that as well. We provide some gift cards that are recyclable. We provide advanced films that protect your automobile from scratch and dents and that are self-healing, so that if you get a rock that hits your car, it pulls out that scratch without you having to do anything. We provide the packaging applications for premium brands like Tiffany's. You might see that iconic blue. That would be a packaging product of ours. So typically we're competing in very large markets, but in the premium ends of those markets, providing the highest efficacy or the highest premium solution for our customers. We like to say if it's easy to do, it's probably not for us. If it's hard to replicate, then that's probably where Mativ plays, and we provide those unique solutions, engineering solutions to our customers. So it's a little bit complicated, but hopefully that gives you a couple of examples of who we are and what we do and how we provide value to our customers. It's creating those critical solutions for our customers is where we really play.
So where did the name Mativ come from? How did you come about naming the new organization?
You know, it's interesting because as you create a new company, as you would imagine, there's a lot of things you have to do, and finding a name is one of them. And we had been working with an agency for some time. I came from former Nina. We were working with an agency for some time, and we were talking about rebranding the company. And I said on one of our calls, because I knew we were about to merge, but no one else really did, I said, how long would it take, or how would we think about if we had to completely rebrand, including a new name? And I think the advertising agency said, about 6 months. And I said, what about like 6 weeks? And so that's what we did. And they did an amazing job. So they really interviewed folks, understood what we did, created a whole bunch of opportunities. We went from like 400 names to 88 names to 12 names to 4 to 2. And then it became about what legal rights you can own for a name. So Mativ is really material solutions. That's the Mativ through innovation, and that's how we create value in the marketplace.
Great. Well, you mentioned, a merger of equals is kind of an unusual transaction. I think it makes up less than 1% of overall M&A every single year. So how did the idea of this merger of equals come about?
Yeah, the merger of equals is such an unusual transaction, and usually they fall apart under the social issues. Who's going to be CEO, who's going to be the chairman, who's going to be on the board. We really didn't struggle with that. And the idea came about from a couple of areas. I would say both companies had been on each other's radar screen for a number of years. We made very complementary products, selling into the same markets, but not competing. So there was strong industrial logic. And then both companies were headquartered in Alpharetta. We were both former spinoffs of Kimberly-Clark decades ago. But the fact that we were both in Alpharetta meant that I knew the former CEO of SWM, he knew me, and we started having coffee. We started talking about, the potential opportunities, and then when the timing would be right to potentially create a merger. So it started with a cup of coffee. It took us about a year. We had our boards involved all along the way. I would tell you it was pretty smooth. We really did not run into many bumps along the way, and it was really predicated on 3 core tenets. The first one is the strategic fit, or the industrial logic, and the fact that we did have very complementary products, common customers, going into the same end markets, but we didn't compete. The second one was synergies. 2 public companies coming together. You don't need 2 CEOs. You don't need 2 CFOs and 2 law firms and all those things. So there was significant, what I would call easy synergies. A lot of people wouldn't call them easy. That had to make it happen. But easy synergies, there was $65 million worth of synergies that we were able to identify really quickly. And then the third one was scale. We were two companies at about $1 billion, $1.5 billion in revenue. Coming together and creating a larger company just gave us greater scale for how we can make decisions, for access to capital markets, for how we attract and brand ourselves in the marketplace. So those were really the three, core tenets of it. And I think it came together because we had boards that were very open-minded about how we create the greatest value for our shareholders.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. So, from your perspective, you've been a part of a lot of different transactions. How is this MOE different from a CEO perspective and from interacting with the board versus a normal, everyday kind of M&A acquisition?
Yeah, I would say it's very different. If you've been a part of acquisitions, there's a clear buyer and there's a clear seller. And yes, you're looking for the best of both worlds, but as a buyer, you're kind of coming in with some constants. You might be coming in with here's our systems platforms that we're going to use. Here's our culture that we're going to make sure we create together. In a merger of equals, you're really looking for an understanding of the best of both worlds and how we move forward with that common approach. And I would tell you, you're coming together where we had two people working together. We called it two in a box. You had two people working together knowing there was only going to be one person at the end of the day. So culturally, creating an environment of transparency and communication and collaboration was even more of an important part of how we came together than I'd say a normal acquisition. And there's always surprises in any acquisition or any transaction, and I'd say positive surprises and negative surprises. I would say one of the very, very positive surprises of this one was that the folks working together from both companies, it was amazing. The professionalism, the productivity, the efforts. I think it helped that we were within 5 miles of one another so we could sit face to face and in person and have these conversations. But it was really amazing as we worked through that. And we worked very quickly to stand up the organization to eliminate that level of uncertainty that can permeate the entire organization.
So one part of this, and as you were bringing those two organizations together, and I know I've heard you say this often, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast. So how did you bring, with the two in the box, and how did you kind of bring the culture to life and really bring the organization to life under the new mantle of Mativ?
Yeah, I do say that a lot. Peter Drucker said it first, but I copy it a lot. Because,
you said it better.
Yeah,
just
I think so. Because I truly believe it. And I think if you have ever been a part of an organization that didn't have a clearly defined culture, you know how confusing it can be. It's often the voices that are the loudest that create the culture, or there's just a mixture and you can't even really define who you are and who you aren't. And so when we came together, we made it a priority to say, we're going to work to understand both companies' cultures, where we have similarities, where we have differences, and then where we want to go in the future. And we did that very early in the process as soon as we merged, and we created a set of values, 5 values. We said we can't do more than 5 because none of us can remember more than 5. They have to be simple. It can't sound like a consultant is talking, and they have to be us. It can't sound like it could be an ice cream shop or any other type of company. So we started with safety because we are a manufacturer and the safety of our employees is our #1 priority. But we also said it's not just about physical safety, it's about emotional and psychological safety and ensuring that we have an environment and culture where people can bring their whole selves to the office every single day because we know that's how we're going to get the best results. We talked about you have to be curious, so that's one of our values. We expect everybody to be constantly curious, how we can do things better, how we can creatively destruct what we do today to make it better tomorrow. We know our competition isn't sitting still, so it's important we're the ones moving forward quickly. We talked about challenging one another and having a voice. So that's one of our values is have a voice. You're a key stakeholder. We're, a $2.2 billion revenue company. You can see your fingerprints on our results. And it's important that everyone feels like they have a voice and that we challenge each other upwards, peer-to-peer, downwards, and that we're respectful in how we do that, but that we're listening to one another. Winning with customers was our fourth value, so ensuring that we had clear customer centricity. You know, probably if you've done an MBA program, you've studied kind of the three operating models of how companies win, and it's either customer intimacy, operational excellence, or innovation. And we said we win with customer intimacy. And that means we have to know our customers better than anybody else, and we have to know their customers and how they win and what their unmet market needs are and what their pain points are before they even articulate them to us, so that we can create a solution that's difficult to replicate, that others can't easily come in and replicate for us. And then the last one is my favorite one, and that is make it happen. We are a scrappy, gritty, roll your sleeves up, get things done, player coach type of environment, and it takes all of us to be a part of that to win. And so that underlying make it happen, if you see something that needs done, grab it and run with it, I think is a really important part of the values at Mativ. So we rolled those values out. We did it by collecting and collaborating across the organizations. We made sure they translated appropriately to all the different languages where we compete. And then it's important that we hold each other accountable to them. They can't just be words on the wall. And so we talk about them a lot. We recognize them internally. We've defined what they really mean at different levels in the organization. What does make it happen look like if you're a customer service rep versus you're a vice president of sales? And so there's real clarity in how we see these successfully evidenced in our environment, and then we recognize those every single day. So I am a true believer that culture can eat strategy for breakfast, that if we don't have the right culture, it will limit our success. And bringing two companies together, you're creating a culture. And so it's even more challenging if we've got people not working in the office and not face-to-face and spending time together. So it was a clear priority for us.
So as you brought, we're about a year in or a little over a year after the merger happened, what surprised you most through the early integration or through this last year as the integration, these two businesses have come together?
Well, like I said, I think there's always surprises in transactions, some positive, some not so positive. I'd say one of the big positives was how well the teams came together and worked together and collaborated. I think the not so positive surprise we had was we had a cyber attack 3 days after we merged. So it was a Sunday evening, 10 o'clock at night, my CIO calls, tells me we had a cyber issue. Quite honestly, I did not digest it. I was like, okay, we have servers go down every once in a while. We'll get this back up. We'll be running. In the next day, we're all working through it. It was about 7 o'clock the next evening when I was sitting with my CFO and my CIO and our chief counsel, and it hit all of us like, this is a really big deal. It brought us to our knees. Our operations stopped. We couldn't print labels to ship. We couldn't get product out. We couldn't take orders. So that was a horrible negative surprise, but I would tell you how the team responded, how quickly we were able to manually figure out how to get back up and running, and how we figured out even how to communicate with one another during this time, because emails were down and communication lanes were down. Everybody did a phenomenal job of coming together. It took us about over a month, I'd say, to get back to what we might call normal. And it had a pretty significant impact on us, but I think it's during that crisis that we even created a stronger culture. And knowing that it came from an outside enemy, it wasn't something that was created internally, made it even more impactful, I think, for creating that culture.
So separately from a business standpoint, for you as a person, as a leader, what were your key takeaways from this unique experience? What did you learn throughout this whole process?
I think there's a number of things, and I'll limit it to, I think, 4. But one is communication, second is collaboration, customer centricity, and then I'd say culture and the focus on culture. And I want to talk about communication just for a minute, because I know we all know you can never communicate enough, and I would have told you I think I'm a pretty good communicator, and I think we have a good communications team, and we do. But during this transaction, there was so much uncertainty of the two companies coming together, of what we were even going to be, of what businesses we were going to keep. And what I recognized was it was important for me to have a lower level of communication, like one step down, not just what we were doing, but why we were doing it and how we were going to do it. And I'll give you a really easy example. One of my favorite things to do in my role is to get out to our manufacturing sites. I started in a large manufacturing site. I love it. And so it's not uncommon if I can free up a day, I will call my global operations leader and say, hey, I see you're going to be in our plant. We have a plant in Athens, say. You're going to be in Athens. I'd love to join you there. And my intent is just to go and learn more about the site and talk to the people and how we do things and look for opportunities. And I think when you're at the site, you're closest to the pulse of the business. But if I didn't communicate my intent, it became this high level of angst and uncertainty of, oh my gosh, she's coming here to close us down, or she's coming here to tell us really bad news, or all these things. And I had a boss before who told me this, and it is very true. When people don't know, they make it up, and when they make it up, it's bad, and it's usually worse than reality. It's just human nature in all of us. And so I think, the learning for me was not only can't we communicate enough, but we need to communicate our intent. And I recognized I was rebranding myself. I mean, I came from the smaller company. There was a large part of our employee population that didn't know me, that didn't know how I make decisions, that didn't know how I think through things. And so I had to be more overt in those areas of how I communicate and how we do things. And I think that is really important, because then once people get to know us and they understand your intent, it's a lot easier to assume positive intent rather than assume the worst.
So let's shift gears a little bit then and talk about where is Mativ today, where is it headed? It's no secret that it's uncertain economic times. There's a lot of challenges out in the marketplace. What do you see? How do you see Mativ progressing forward from here and towards its goals?
I am so excited about where we are, and I'm thrilled that we've been able to make the changes. We've taken big swings in the last 2 years. We, as both companies came out of COVID in 2020, we made big acquisitions, both companies. Nina, who I was with at the time, we had record cash flow. We made our largest acquisition. It was our most successful acquisition. I say all the time, if every acquisition was like that one, we would do them every day. So we came out of that, and then within a year, we merged. And so we became one company, much greater strength, much more synergized, so a lot of opportunities for people and culture building and team. And then we recently announced the divestiture, the intent to divest about 20% of our portfolio. It's tobacco-related products. And we knew going in that was something we were going to want to do, and it's something the merger gave us the opportunity to do because of the scale. I would tell you that those are big swings, and so it's important we deliver on those and then we continue to execute. I think we have a really clear strategy. We're a little bit more complex than I would like us to be for our size, but I think it's really important that everybody knows how they win and how they put points on the board. So we've been really clear of, we have a couple businesses that we say, you're all about outsized growth. Like, you have to grow at 1.5 times, 2 times the market. That's how you win. And then we have some business units that we say, you have to drive margins. Like, you don't have the right for us to invest yet until you drive your margins up. And then we have a business unit that we say, you're all about generating cash. And by the way, we're going to take that cash and we're going to infuse it over here into our growth platforms. Now, there's a lot of concern about, hey, Julie, if you're that overt, are you going to demoralize people? Do you want to be the cash, generating business over here? But what I would tell you is that clarity of how you win unleashes the opportunity, because then people know how I put points on the board, and all of us want to put points on the board. So I think that's a really important part of getting clarity in our strategy and being able to say it across the organization, that everybody understands it, can say it in their own words, and knows how they fit in. So for us, we're moving forward with a more streamlined portfolio. We're going to continue to reduce complexity over time. We have to execute. Markets are really challenging right now, like nothing I've ever seen in 30 years. The ability to see the demand in the market is really challenging. And so we have to really focus on how we control our own destiny And that turns a lot inward to cost management when you don't have certainty in the market. So that's really where we're focused today. How do we continue to take more and more cost out of our system?
So one of the unique things that I think that it's been fun to watch and see how you've cascaded the strategy down throughout the organization is what we call the Northstar. So, maybe talk a little bit about how did the idea about the Northstar come about, and how do you use it in mobilizing the organization?
That's a great question. So we call it the North Star, and I think we have a slide of an early version of it here. But the intent of the North Star is kind of like putting everything on one page. So here's our ambition, what we want to be when we grow up. Here's our goals. We have to grow 5% top line every year. We have to get to 0 safety incidents, and we have to have over 15% EBITDA margin. Here's how we're going to do that. Here's the growth enablers that we have, and then our values. It puts everything on one page so there's real clarity in it. And then every part of our organization has a double click in. So if I'm in our filtration business, I have a filtration North Star that gets more specific about what my filtration business goals are. The values will stay the same, the ambition will stay the same, but it'll get real clarity. If I'm in the finance team, I'll have a double click into what my finance team goals are. And so it just puts all of us on the same page for how we look at success and measure success. I think it's one of the most powerful tools we've used because it's just very easy to pull it out and say, hey, what we're talking about here, it's not even a part of our strategy that we've defined. Why are we spending time on this? Because many times, we all know it's about priorities, and prioritizing things that we're not going to do is often even harder than prioritizing the things we are going to do. And the North Star provides greater clarity for what are the things we need to be focused on.
So as a leader of a global manufacturing organization, maybe you could share a few thoughts around how do you see the future of manufacturing? How do you see manufacturing continue to modernize and evolve in the U.S. and in other parts of the world?
Yeah, so I've spent my entire career in manufacturing, and I love it. I love, like I said, being in the sites. And I think it has a tremendous future in the U.S. and across the globe. But it will definitely look different in the future than it does today, just like it looks different today than it did, a couple of decades ago. The automation and technology and availability of data and insights and real-time data and being able to potentially control variables remotely, like not even within the manufacturing site, brings on a whole new opportunity for how we manage manufacturing sites. I don't believe it eliminates the need for the humanity in it. We still have to have really strong people who know how to utilize these tools, who know how to make decisions that a tool can't always make for us, and who knows how to be on the floor helping us continue to drive productivity. But manufacturing, I think, is a fantastic environment to be in. I think it will continue to grow and evolve. It will just look much more automated, as all of us do today, right? We're on our phones, we're not on paper, those type of things, and I would believe we're going to see the same thing in our manufacturing environments.
So here, a lot of people in the audience are clearly passionate about UGA and about Georgia. What about manufacturing in Georgia? What makes Georgia, from your perspective, a good place to do business?
Well, being in this area is a fantastic place. I mean, first of all, we're an hour from Athens, so clearly there's lots of future leaders available to us. But I think you do get the best of both worlds where we are, because you get this amazing professional network of Atlanta and the surrounding areas with a lot of talent and a great hiring pool. And then you also get some of our more smaller communities where we have sites, and we have operators that have grown up and raised their families for generations at some of our manufacturing sites. And so having the ability to have both of that and within one community, within one state, I think it's a really exciting place for us to be in, and that we'll continue to grow our place here.
So you find yourself in a kind of a unique position. You are one of the limited number of female CEOs of manufacturing companies, and you're also kind of one of the few female CEOs in the Georgia and the Atlanta area. So talk a little bit about, how do you see the value of continuing to push for greater diversity amongst, various layers of the corporate ladder, and, what's needed to make that happen, and how do you navigate that in a more of a kind of a male-dominated industry?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of progress, I think, from a DE&I standpoint, but we still have a long way to go. And I know I don't have to, lecture or tell anybody in this room. I mean, we get to the best answers with diversity, and it's not necessarily all about gender diversity or racial diversity. It's about diversity of perspective and past experiences. And so I think that's as important. I am not a believer in things like quotas, but I am a believer that if you don't have a conscious effort to increase the diversity within your organization, it's a real miss. We have within the manufacturing environment, within our sites, less than 15% of our operators are women. We're missing half the population in our sites. And that's not uncommon, but what it means is we have to figure out how we tap into that part of the population and the demographic so that we can attract greater talent. And for that part of the population in many of our manufacturing sites, which are in very rural communities, it means we have to figure out how we manage greater flexibility in an operating environment. So that might mean you don't have the same person working the same 8-hour shift. You have a handoff at 4 hours. It might mean within the same site, you have some people that work static shifts and some people that work swing shifts. Those are all very different type of work schedules than what we have historically done. But it's that level of flexibility I think we have to continue to drive towards that will create greater diversity. I have a management team. I think there's 12 of us, and I think within my BU leaders, so there's 7 BU leaders, 6 of them were born outside of the U.S. That's a tremendous level of diversity. I love it. But it's not necessarily going to show up on a diversity scorecard. I think the important part is understanding what diversity really means and then how we continue to drive that across the organization. And we know, you've all seen the stats. You've all seen the results. You get greater results when you have greater diversity. Your customers want to be working with someone that looks like them and feels like them and can empathize with them. And so I think it's just something we have to continue to prioritize.
So clearly you have a lot going on. You're a leader of a global organization. So how do you juggle the demands of being, a CEO, being a mom, being a wife? How do you juggle all of these different things?
Sometimes better than others. Yeah. I think work-life balance matters to everyone. It's different for everyone, and it changes over our lifetime and the season of life that we're in. I mean, I was 7 years married without kids. I had a very different lifestyle than when I had young children. And so it changes how I think about my work-life balance. I think for us as leaders, we have to understand that and be flexible and understanding that's how we're going to get the best talent is recognizing it matters for everyone, it's different for everyone, and we have to create an environment that enables that. I'm a big believer in, take your vacations and get out of the office and don't call into calls. I tell everybody that works for me, you call into a call or you call me, you've invited me to your vacation. And you don't want me on your vacation because now I'm in. You open the window and I'm in. So I just think it's important that, we all recognize and prioritize it for ourselves, and that as leaders we create a culture that can prioritize it. It's not you're the one as an individual that has to prioritize it. As a woman and a mom and a wife, I mean, I'm a believer in you can have it all. You just probably can't do it all. You're going to have to make decisions about what you're willing to give and take on. So for us, I don't like cooking. I'm not a good cook. So we eat dinner. My kids are a little older now, but we ate dinner together almost every night. But it was a lot of takeout. But that was just our thing. So I think those are the things that all of us have to figure out. What are the areas we're going to prioritize in our life that are most meaningful for the stage of life that we're in?
And I can totally vouch for the vacation thing. It only takes once. So lastly, Julie, I know, we're a room full of Bulldogs. The burning question that is on everybody's mind, and I know you're a huge sports fan. Can the Dogs do it a third time in a row?
I mean, come on. Of course the Dogs can do it a third time in a row. I think, is that all the questions you have, Kyle?
That's unless you want more. But
No.
That's all the ones that I have, but would love to open it up for other members of the audience here.
the cyber hack incident, and that really resonated because in my last company we had a devastating cyber incident. So honestly, I had a few questions come to mind, and you can maybe address some of them, or whichever one you really want to talk about. But I mean, can you tell us maybe a little bit about how you worked your way out of it? Any interesting temporary solutions that came up, or maybe some things that you've done since then to ramp up cybersecurity, or even just leadership in a crisis and what you learned about that?
Sure. So I think I say about this that if it hadn't happened to me, it would be an amazing story, because it is crazy how quickly and how deep this occurred. And what we recognized was that we had the threat actor in our system for a number of weeks before we recognized it. They came in through a phishing email. And so all those phishing email tests that we get, really important. And not only did they come in through a phishing email, they were then able to penetrate and expand beyond just the local arena that they came into. They came in through a site. So I think for me, the learning was how quickly and the magnitude of this, and that we thought we were prepared. I mean, we had cyber security efforts in place. But this, like I said, brought us to our knees. I think from a learning standpoint, it was recognizing that manufacturing is and can be a big target, not just credit card numbers and banks and things like that. Recognizing that we need to have backup plans and make sure we had crisis management plans, so we all ran to the crisis management plan and then realized, oh, that's not going to work here. So I think really thinking through that and doing tabletop type of exercises, I think it's really easy to say in advance, I'm never going to negotiate with a threat actor until you're there and you realize you haven't shipped anything for the last 10 days. And so I think thinking through how are you going to respond before it happens, because I don't believe we can stop cyber attacks, but we can sure manage what we do when they happen and our readiness for them. We have amped up our cybersecurity efforts, we have amped up our testing efforts, and we have put different securities in place since that time to ensure that we're as prepared as possible, if and when we have another threat actor.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look across the Mativ business units, heavy contract manufacturing, is there any plans, I guess now you're starting to realize the synergies, now you're focused on growth. Is there any plans to start maybe owning some more brands, creating brands? I think it's SCAPA business unit specifically, and running that all the way through different sales channels, or is it kind of maintain contract manufacturing, don't want to interfere with customer base? Be curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it varies a little bit, but I think we're pleased with the markets in which we compete. So up until the merger, both companies had a strategy to acquire into new markets, adjacencies, and out of our traditional markets, which was tobacco-based paper. And so paper's less than 20% of our portfolio at this time once we exit engineered papers, which is our tobacco business. So I think we're pleased with the neighborhoods we're in, and now it's just how we continue to accelerate growth. So it's investment in new technologies and new capabilities, expanding our addressable market, ensuring that we're aligned with winning customers. We're not looking to grow into new markets. We're looking for how we accelerate growth in our existing markets and expand our addressable markets.
Good morning. Thanks so much for your time this morning. It was great to hear from you. My wife was excited as well. She works with y'all on some consulting things. So, but I am in commercial real estate world, and just curious your take on building that culture and your return to office policies, and how have you guided that, and getting people back or doing it virtually? What are some of your best practices?
Well, that is such a loaded question with my
It
team
is.
members here. This is like a hot topic.
Oh yeah.
So I come from a generation where you were in the office all the time, and I recognize that I am not as nearly as productive at home as I am in the office, and I recognize that for me, I'm much more likely to walk to someone's office and talk to them than to call them. I also recognize that that's different for everyone. And I would tell you what we see internally is our youngest part of our population, I think, is in the office a lot. And then there's this season of life where people have a lot of priorities they're juggling, and then they, want that flexibility. I think that's the key. So our stated policy is in the office 3 days a week. My unstated policy is I really don't want it to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't want that long weekend there kind of thing. So that's what we do. But I would tell you our youngest employees are in the office. I'd say our more tenured employees are in the office a lot. It's that season of life where you have a lot of people have juggled priorities with either aging parents or children or, different things. And providing them the flexibility to manage that, I think, is really important. So we haven't mandated a back to the office 5 days a week, but we have a new site in Alpharetta. We tried to make it as, as wonderful as possible so that everybody wants to come in and be a part of it. And we encourage that, and we really say we want everyone there at least 3 days a week. That is a great question because this definitely comes up. I mean, if you're in a manufacturing site, you're there. You can't work from home. And really that means our support staff too. If you're an accountant in a manufacturing site, you're at the site. And so it's just a question of, hey, you have more flexibility depending on where you sit in the organization. And it's a matter of, I don't want to say that's life, but we choose to be in manufacturing or we choose to be in headquarters and there's opportunity. So we manage it across the board pretty differently.
Hey, Julie, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. It's been a great time. As an employee who's been through a similar large merger of equals, one thing that stood out in the intro was about how you're proud of driving employee engagement. I'm curious, prior to the Mativ merger, how you thought about employee engagement, how you measured that and monitored that and kind of tweaked how you looked at it, and then how that's changed with COVID and post merger of equals.
Yeah, we do it a couple of different ways. We have what I would call pulse surveys. So we do global town halls once a quarter. There's 5 questions that'll come out after every global town hall. So we kind of get a pulse from the organization and comments, and then we track that to see, are we headed in the right direction? Are we resonating with broadly with employees? And then we also do employee engagement surveys. Now we haven't done one since we've merged, but we're getting ready to do one, and we did them previously at my former company, which is a scientific tool that we use with an outside agency to help us gauge and understand where we have the greatest levels of engagement and the greatest opportunities to drive engagement. And then from there, we had pretty detailed plans by function, because you can slice and dice the data a lot of different ways, but by function of what are the 1 to 2 things every function or team's going to do to continue to drive employee engagement. So we tried to take a pretty analytical approach to it. I would say since the merger, it's been less analytical and more about communication and collaboration and visibility and transparency, and even to the point where, we try to be as transparent as possible about our plans and then tell people, like, this could potentially change, and we'll let you know when it changes. But I think erring on that side of over-communicating has made a big difference.
Thank you so much for being here this morning. My question is about your employees as well. I saw that you had approximately 6,000 employees. In your decision-making, how do you balance the responsibility for 6,000 people with making the best decision for the company?
Yeah, I mean, it's not all decisions are always strictly financial decisions, right? And so it's making sure that we're doing just what you described, balancing how we make the decisions and understanding if we have the opportunities for longer-term growth versus short-term immediate needs. It's also understanding, if we're consolidating facilities, we work to offer those employees opportunities to transfer to another facility. And we support that. And then we try to have as much runway and lead time as possible so that we're not surprising employees with any kind of changes that we're making. But I think, again, that goes back to the transparency in our strategy. It's really clear, like most of our employees are in our manufacturing sites. It's really clear which of our sites are what their roles are. Which of those have to be really highly flexible and agile, which of those have to run really hard and 24/7. And so they know what success looks like. And then I think if they're meeting those success metrics, there's just a level of security and continuity. And we try to be really clear about what those success metrics are.
Julie, maybe to add on to that, what do you think about, or maybe it's a good opportunity to talk about the decision-making forums and how you make major strategic decisions?
That's a good point. So we have a couple of decision-making forums we use. The first one is called an alignment session, and an alignment session is just getting the right stakeholders, not a huge group, but the right stakeholders in a room and kind of hashing out what your beliefs are with facts, not just feelings, but with facts. Like, I believe we need to do this because of this reason, and here's the rationale behind it. Coming out of an alignment session, you're not in consensus. We're not looking for consensus. We're looking for, can we agree as a team, this is how we move the ball down the court? It's moving in the right direction. Okay, then keep going forward. And then if it's a large decision on either resources or investment, say CapEx, we go to a challenge session. And a challenge session is the decision makers are in the room, and we have a format we follow on what are the options here? What's our optimized base case? Have we looked at different alternatives? What's the range of the financial outcomes? We know it won't be laser-like, so what's the best thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? And then we make a decision coming out of that challenge session, so there's real clarity in who the decision maker is. And I think a really important part of our culture, and we talk about this, is once we make a decision, we go. We lock arms. We're not having these meetings after the meetings where you're like, she's insane, I don't know what she's thinking. We're going to lock arms, and we're going to go. And if we get new information, we'll pivot, and we'll do something different. But there's no good that comes from second-guessing, all the decisions that we make. I am a real believer in speed with purpose, not reckless speed. And when you're moving with speed, we're going to make some bad decisions. It's just life. We make too many to not misstep a little bit. As long as we learn from them, we get better at it, and we don't keep making the same bad decision, I think that's a great spot to be in. I would much rather have 80% of the information move and make a couple of mistakes along the way than be holding still, because we know our competition isn't holding still.
Just with reference to AI, what magnitude amongst the manufacturing CEOs do they really give the role of AI and in terms of management from the C-suites?
I would tell you, I'm part of a CEO manufacturing group. So there's about 12 of us. I would tell you, I don't think we just all understand it, quite honestly. I think we understand parts of it, and depending on what lens we're coming from, it's so new and it's so evolving. And what is even classified as AI is, oftentimes different things. So it just feels like we're at the very early stages of the life cycle of understanding it. But I think everybody, at least in the forum I'm in, everybody knows it is the future. It's just a matter of how quickly and when and how we walk our way there and prioritize it and what we need to do for it. So I just feel like there's still a lot of, I know I need to know more about it, but I don't yet quite know, how we should move forward. I think there's a lot of that in the organizations right now. So a big opportunity for sure.
Julie, thank you so much for being here today. It's been great learning more about Mativ. I really appreciate the comments and some of the insight on culture building and values. So I have two questions. First, probably easy. Do you think that you guys may have been a target for the cyber attack because of the merger, or was that coincidental? And then secondly, love the concept of the Northstar. So I'm curious a little bit how that was implemented, and then how does that get revisited at the corporate level and then within each of the business functions?
Sure. So for the first question, yes. I think anytime there's a transaction, you hit radar screens. And so I think we hit a radar screen with the transaction that made us more visible and a higher likelihood of being a target. And we were built through acquisitions, both companies. And so the integration of our systems, I think we have 13 ERP systems, I'm almost embarrassed to say. So, the integration of our systems, there's a lot of opportunities there. So I think, yes, anytime you're going through some change where you're in the media, you're, highlighted in some way, you're going to become more of a target. Your second question was culture and how we've done. Is that? With the Northstar. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question because we're actually revisiting it right now. So we're a little over a year in, and we said, hey, I think we need more clarity in the corporate North Star. We kind of started a little bit more vague than I would ideally like because Quite honestly, we're just coming together and learning about one another. So we'll refine that. I don't expect we'll have a hard right turn or left turn, but we'll continue to refine it. I think the power in the North Star is you have to have a corporate one, but then it's the cascading ones. And it's the ones that the I team knows this is my North Star, and these are my goals, and here's what success looks like. And yes, I have the same values and the same ambition, but it has to be unlocking growth in these businesses. That's where I think the power of it is. And you can call it strategy on a page, you can call it a placemat, whatever you want, but it's that singular one-page document that we'll continue to refer to. Every global town hall, I start with the North Star. Most of our teams, staff meetings and things like that, they're going to talk about the North Star. So I think it has to be a living, breathing document that comes to life. I just think it's such a powerful tool because it's on one page. If you've ever been part of strategy, you know you can do like a 25-page white paper that you can't even get through because it's so burdensome. I mean, this just puts it out there and it causes people to ask questions and prioritize, which I think is the power in it. I appreciate the time today and really thank you for your questions.
Thank you so much, Julie. I think we all learned a lot. And sharing your wisdom with the group. So it's our tradition here at Terry Third Thursday to present a keepsake to all of our speakers. And we'd like to give you this glass sculpture that is red and black for the dogs as a memento and token of our appreciation.
Oh, thank you so much. It's beautiful.
And as a reminder, everybody, please get your parking validated on your way out if you haven't already. And we hope you'll all return next week or next month for Ryan Oliver. Thank you.